There are times in life when you face circumstances that are not your fault, but you can step in and take responsibility and lead people towards healing and hope. And as a church, and me personally, I'm committed to being a voice for those who may have felt like they've been voiceless for so long. I've wrestled with many questions while trying to find answers. The hardest part is that every answer only seems to lead to more questions for me. And it may be the same for you as well. Elaine and I were processing it, obviously, as family. Elaine is a daughter, and I've done my best to be there for her. Me as a son-in-law. We're processing the pain in real time in the same way I know many of you are. We're having to navigate tough conversations with our children around this conversation and shedding tears as we process with them. Many of you know we have a daughter who's 10 and a daughter who's 9, and having to navigate the emotions and trying to do our best to care for them. We've lived in this tension of loving a person while at the same time knowing there are consequences to actions.
I think we can all agree that the actions of Pastor Robert Morris of failing to confront his sin and proceeding with life like nothing happened has caused harm to a lot of people along the way. Besides Cindy Clemeshire, the victim of his abuse, his family, wife, sons, and daughters are experiencing an unprecedented season of pain and shame. It's a difficult position to be where someone you loved and admired comes out to be an abuser. Relationships are in jeopardy.
Elaine and I are doing our best to pursue healing and turn to the Lord during this time. We want to be able to lead and love God and His people for a long time, and we know that something like this can rock the faith of many, and it can also hinder the purity of our hearts. This is why we're proactively pursuing counseling with trusted people and wholeness that can only be found in God. In this season, I'm doing my best to not let my disappointment turn into resentment. Another question that I've asked myself, and you may be asking yourself as well, is how do I respond? How do we respond during this time? And for me, I come back to the thing that's always been true by focusing on Jesus. He is the author and the finisher of our faith.
Pastor Ethan Fisher, a pastor at Gateway Houston and a son-in-law to Pastor Robert Morris, has spoken about the child molestation allegations that were brought to light involving Robert Morris and Cindy Clemeshire in the 80s. Pastor Ethan, who was married to Elaine, Robert's daughter, said that he was lost for words, and as a family were grieving and shocked over the unexpected news. He said these words when he was addressing his congregation, and said his intention was to share his heart and obviously care for and bring comfort. Pastor Ethan was very emotional as he delivered the short sermon and times took pauses to let the message he was sharing sink in. He distanced the Gateway Church Houston with Robert and said he had already resigned as an overseer in his church.
My prayer is that I can extend comforting words over this past week. We have been obviously grieved and shocked over the child sexual abuse allegations that have been brought to light regarding Robert Morris. For years, he has shared about a moral failure early on in his marriage, but prior to this past week, the leadership, including myself and even Elaine, the leadership here at Gateway Church Houston, and I have all the facts regarding the allegations. And like many of you, we have now been made aware of the age of the victim and even the length of the abuse that happened. On June 18th, Robert Morris resigned from his role as senior pastor of Gateway Church in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and is no longer serving as the apostolic and overseeing area elder here at Gateway Church Houston. That role as the apostolic elder was really to give wisdom and guidance as I needed it. And that was very important to be able to note. From its launch, from the church's launch, Gateway Church Houston is operated not as a campus, but as an autonomous church, both legally and financially, for those that may not be aware. And as a senior pastor, I lead the board of elders that govern the church, provide vision, initiatives, direction, and even accountability as we seek to fulfill the mission that God has given us as a church to reach the greater Houston area. And I am grateful for all that Gateway Church in the Dallas-Fort Worth area has done to support us in the calling that God has placed on our lives. One of the questions I've asked myself during this time is, how should I feel? I'm sure you may have asked that question. There's many feelings that you're obviously processing. There's many feelings that we have processed as well, even as a family. And the truth is, we should feel whatever we feel. I think many times we could try to run away from our feelings, but that never leads to healing in any capacity.
Pastor Ethan explained that, like everybody else, he had heard Pastor Robert share about his moral failure, but not the specific details that came out now. He said that since the story broke, it has been a nightmare for them as a family. Him and his wife have already started seeking professional help to help them process the news. He says they are truly devastated and disappointed with Pastor Robert, his father-in-law. He thanks every person who had reached out to them and appreciated the prayers not only for him, but also for the church. He said, "I want to say we appreciate it. That's really what's truly carried us during this past week. For us and for many of us, this is unprecedented, and we appreciate the love, we appreciate the support, and we appreciate the way that you cared for us." End quote. He acknowledged many pastors and even many leaders and even longtime friends who had reached out to them during this difficult time, and that's what's really been able to encourage them through it all. Pastor Evans says, for those asking themselves how do they respond during this time, he says it all goes back to the thing that's always been true, by focusing on Jesus. He is the author and the finisher of our faith, and since he is the one writing our stories, we can trust his pen even in the midst of not understanding everything that is happening. He says he has learnt that while our feelings may move us, it's ultimately our faith in Jesus that anchors. He encouraged the congregation not to cover their emotions, but express their feelings, mourn, lament, get angry, and trust God to heal and help come out of this season victoriously. He finished by taking time to pray for his congregation on his knees. How I pray that God will strengthen Pastor Ethan and his family as they navigate through this season. I pray for the church members at Gateway Church to focus on Jesus and not let their faith be shaken due to the failure of Pastor Robert Morris. In another update, Gateway Church has edited the bio of James Morris, who was to take the role of the senior pastor after Pastor Robert had retired. The earlier bio mentioned he was serving alongside his father, and it was him who had nominated him to be successor. The current bio does not mention the disgraced Pastor Robert Morris and now says James is ready to take Gateway to the next season. Thank you so much for watching this video to the very end. Please consider subscribing, click that notification, and leave a comment about the contents of today's video.